What would you do if you were 7 months pregnant, standing in the rain, watching the man you built an empire with get down on one knee? What if the ring he held wasn't for you, and the woman gasping in delight was his assistant? For Olivia Ainsworth, this nightmare was her reality. But this isn't a story about a woman who crumbled. It's about a woman who, in the face of ultimate betrayal, remembered one crucial fact. She was the one who built the cage. And she was the only one who held the key. This is the story of how a frozen heart froze a multi-billion-dollar company. The penthouse apartment on Park Avenue was a monument to their success, a silent testament to a decade of relentless ambition. From the 72nd floor, New York City, sprawled below a glittering carpet of dreams they had seemingly conquered, Olivia Ainsworth, her body gracefully accommodating the 7-month swell of her first child, stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows, one hand resting protectively on her stomach. The morning light caught the flawless 10-carat diamond on her other hand, a symbol of the life she and her husband James had meticulously constructed. Their story was the kind magazines wrote about. James was the charismatic front man, the visionary with a silver tongue who could charm investors out of their fortunes. Olivia, however, was the architect. With a mind as sharp as a diamond cutter's tool and a degree in financial engineering from MIT, she was the one who designed the intricate corporate structures, the bylaws, and the financial safeguards for their venture capital firm, Ascendancy Group. She had written the code both literally and figuratively that made their empire not just profitable, but impenetrable, or so she thought. "You're staring at the city like you're planning to buy it." James's voice, smooth as aged whiskey, came from behind her. He wrapped his arms around her, his chin resting on her shoulder as his hands came to rest on her belly. He was handsome in that effortlessly classic way, sharp jaw-piercing blue eyes, and a smile that seemed to disarm everyone it touched. "Just admiring our handiwork," Olivia murmured, leaning back into him. "Remember when we started in that tiny office in Brooklyn with nothing but a second-hand printer and a mountain of debt? And your brilliant mind," he added, kissing her temple. "I just had the ideas. You made them bulletproof." He squeezed her gently. "How are my 2 favorite people doing this morning?" "We're good," she smiled. The baby kicked a small, reassuring flutter against his palm. "He's excited to see his dad?" "I have to run," James said, already pulling away. "Big meeting with the board for the new tech fund. It's going to be a late one. Don't wait up." Olivia turned her smile, faltering slightly. "Another one, James. That's the 3rd late-night board meeting this week. Is everything okay with the fund?" A flicker of something annoyance evasion crossed his face before being replaced by his usual charming confidence. "Everything's perfect. That's why it's taking so much work. We're on the cusp of something huge, Liv. This will set our son up for life, generations to come." He kissed her, a quick, almost perfunctory gesture. "I love you. Both of you." And then he was gone, leaving behind the lingering scent of his expensive cologne and a subtle gnawing unease in Olivia's chest. The late nights had become more frequent, his phone more guarded. When she'd picked up his suit jacket from the floor the other day, a faint, unfamiliar perfume, something floral and sweet, a stark contrast to her own subtle woody scent, had clung to the lapel. When she'd asked, he'd laughed it off. "Must have been one of the new associates, Evelyn. She practically bathes in the stuff. You know how it is, celebratory hugs after closing the preliminary round." Olivia knew Evelyn. A junior analyst barely 25, with wide, ambitious eyes and a habit of laughing a little too loudly at all of James's jokes in meetings. Olivia had dismissed it as a combination of professional admiration and youthful insecurity. She trusted James. Their bond wasn't just marriage. It was a partnership forged in the crucible of ambition and shared dreams. They had built Ascendancy Group from nothing. He couldn't jeopardize that. Dismissing the feeling, she walked through their home. The cool Italian marble under her feet, the curated art on the walls, the minimalist furniture that cost more than a suburban house. It all felt different today. It felt less like a home and more like a stage, a beautifully designed set for a play in which she was beginning to forget her lines. She spent the day finalizing the plans for the nursery, a room painted in soft greys and blues with a custom-made crib and a small mobile of handcrafted wooden planets. She was creating a world for her son, a world of stability and love. As she did, she found her mind drifting back to the early days of their company. She remembered the specific clauses she had embedded deep within the company's operating agreement. At the time, they were theoretical fail-safes, designed to protect the company from a hostile takeover or a catastrophic internal collapse. She had insisted on a structure that gave her, as the co-founder and chief financial architect, unilateral control over the company's primary liquidity accounts in the event of a verified breach of the partnership's fiduciary duty. James had called her paranoid. "Who is going to breach our duty, Liv?" "It's just us," he had said, laughing. "Every empire needs a Praetorian Guard," she had replied, only half joking. "This is it." She had designed a two-key system for the master accounts, which held the vast majority of their liquid assets, the lifeblood of their investment operations. She held one digital key, he held the other. But she had also built a back door, a master access protocol that only she knew about. A break glass in case of emergency clause that could be triggered by a single encrypted command from her personal terminal. It was a fail-safe within a fail-safe, a testament to her meticulous, almost obsessive need for control and security. A feature born from a deep-seated belief that even the strongest walls could be breached from the inside. As evening fell, casting long shadows across the expensive furniture, the unease returned stronger this time. James was supposed to be in a board meeting. Out of a sudden, inexplicable impulse, she called Michael, a trusted board member and an old friend. "Olivia, to what do I owe the pleasure?" he answered warmly. "Hi, Michael, sorry to bother you so late. I just wanted to check on how the big meeting is going. James said it was a crucial one." There was a pause on the other end of the line. "Meeting Olivia, there's no board meeting tonight. The tech fund review isn't until next Tuesday. I'm at home, watching the game." The silence that followed stretched for an eternity. The penthouse, once a symbol of her success, suddenly felt like a cool 50 stories in the air. The city lights blurred through the unshed tears in her eyes. Michael's innocent words had not just planted a seed of doubt. They had detonated a bomb in the foundation of her world. The lie was so blatant, so easily disproven. He wasn't just being careless. He was being arrogant. He didn't think she would ever check. Her heart hammered against her ribs, a frantic, trapped bird. The floral scent, the late nights, the guarded phone, they all clicked into place, forming a picture she had refused to see. Her hand went to her stomach, the baby's gentle movements now a painful reminder of the future she had so naively believed in. The grief was a physical thing, a crushing weight that threatened to suffocate her. But beneath the grief, something else was stirring, a cold, quiet fury. The architect of the empire was realizing the walls were not designed to keep enemies out, but to keep her in. And the man she had built them with had just handed her the blueprints for their destruction. The digital breadcrumbs were insultingly easy to follow for a woman of her skills. A quick check of their shared credit card statements, something she hadn't felt the need to do in years, revealed the truth. It wasn't a board meeting. It was a dinner reservation. A two-top at Aurelia, the Michelin-starred restaurant where James had proposed to her 6 years ago. The cruelty of the choice was a deliberate twist of the knife. Her mind went numb. This couldn't be a simple business dinner. Not there. Not on a night he had lied about. The name on the reservation wasn't for a client. It was just his name. He was meeting someone. The image of Evelyn Young and cloyingly sweet flashed in her mind. For a moment, Olivia sagged against the kitchen counter, the cold marble a stark contrast to the fire of betrayal burning through her veins. A part of her wanted to collapse, to let the waves of pain wash over her and drown her. The mother in her screamed to stay home to protect her unborn child from the stress from the inevitable confrontation. But the architect, the builder, the woman who had clawed her way to the top alongside James, refused to be a passive victim in the demolition of her own life. She needed to see. She needed to know. She pulled on a simple black trench coat, her movements stiff and robotic. She didn't bother with makeup or changing out of her comfortable cashmere lounge pants. She grabbed her keys and a plain black umbrella, ignoring the frantic thumping of her own heart. The rain was coming down in sheets as the taxi crawled through the glittering wet streets of Manhattan. Each drop that slid down the window felt like a tear for the life that was dissolving before her eyes. The city lights, usually a source of pride, were a mocking blur. When the taxi pulled up across the street from Aurelia, Olivia paid the driver and got out, huddling under the inadequate shield of her umbrella. The restaurant glowed with a warm, inviting light, a haven of intimacy and romance. She saw them immediately seated at a secluded corner table by the window, the very same table where he had asked her to be his wife. James looked animated, his handsome face lit with a familiar passion she hadn't seen directed at her in months. He was leaning forward, his hand covering the one resting on the table. And across from him, radiant and drinking in his attention, was Evelyn. She was wearing a stunning emerald green dress that hugged her slender figure, a stark, vibrant symbol of youth and ambition. Olivia felt a wave of nausea so profound she had to grip a lamppost to steady herself. Her breath hitched a strangled sob caught in her throat. She was watching a ghost, a reenactment of her own history, with a different actress in the leading role. She watched as they laughed as he refilled her wineglass, as he looked at Evelyn with an intensity that stole the very air from Olivia's lungs. She stood there in the cold, driving rain, a pregnant, invisible spectre, watching her life be given away. The irony was suffocating. She, Olivia Ainsworth, co-founder of Ascendancy Group, a woman whose name commanded respect in boardrooms across the city, was hiding in the shadows like a common stalker. The humiliation was a separate, colder pain from the heartbreak. Time seemed to warp. Minutes stretched into an eternity. She watched them finish their meal, watched the waiter clear their plates. And then it happened. James began to speak, his expression turning serious, tender. Even from across the street, Olivia could see the shift. She knew that look. It was his, "I'm about to change your life" look. He reached into his jacket pocket the same way he had reached into his pocket 6 years ago. But this time, it wasn't for her. He slid out of his chair and onto one knee. A collective gasp seemed to ripple through the restaurant, even though Olivia couldn't hear it. The patrons at nearby tables turned to watch. It was a public spectacle. He was making a statement. He wasn't just leaving his wife. He was erasing her. He opened a small velvet box. The diamond inside caught the light, a brilliant, cruel star. It was smaller than Olivia's, she noted, with a detached, bizarre clarity. But it was new. It was for Evelyn. Evelyn's hands flew to her mouth, her eyes wide with performative shock that quickly morphed into triumphant joy. She nodded a frantic, tearful gesture. James slid the ring onto her finger and rose to his feet, pulling her into a deep, passionate kiss that was met with a smattering of applause from the other diners. Outside, the rain had soaked through Olivia's coat, plastering her hair to her face. She didn't feel the cold. She didn't feel anything but a vast, hollow emptiness where her heart used to be. The world had tilted on its axis, and she was in a free fall. The image of that kiss, of that ring of the applause, was burned into her retinas. She turned away, her movements slow and deliberate. She walked with no destination in mind, the umbrella forgotten at her side. The rain mingled with the silent tears streaming down her face. The betrayal was absolute, the disrespect monumental. He hadn't just cheated. He had staged a coup, a public coronation of his new queen in the very castle he had built with his old one. As she walked through the dark, wet streets, the shock began to recede, replaced by something else. It was an unnerving calm, a terrifying clarity. The grief was still there, a massive, gaping wound. But the pain was crystallizing. It was hardening into a new shape, a new substance. It was forging itself into a weapon. He had proposed to his mistress in their special place. He had lied to his pregnant wife. He had humiliated her. He thought she was at home, barefoot and pregnant, waiting for him. He thought she was just a wife. He had forgotten who she was. He had forgotten that she was the architect, and an architect knows every load-bearing wall, every structural weakness, every secret passage in the empire she built. By the time Olivia finally hailed another taxi, her tears had stopped. Her face was a pale, emotionless mask. The decision was made. He had chosen his future. Now she would choose his, and it would be a future he never saw coming. The taxi ride back to the penthouse was a journey through a foreign landscape. The familiar landmarks of the city were alien shapes in the rain-streaked darkness. Olivia sat perfectly still in the back seat, her wet coat pooling on the leather, her gaze fixed on nothing. The vibrant, chaotic symphony of the city was silent, replaced by a single, low hum in her ears. It was the sound of her own mind rebooting. When she stepped back into the apartment, the silence was cavernous. The scent of James's cologne still hung in the air, a phantom presence that now smelled of deceit. She walked past the living room with its sweeping views of the city that now felt like a mockery. She went straight into their shared home office, a sleek, minimalist space with two identical desks facing each other. His was slightly cluttered with papers and deal memos. Hers was pristine, dominated by a large, high-resolution monitor. For a moment, she looked at the framed photo on his desk. It was from their trip to the Amalfi Coast 2 years ago. They were both smiling, tanned, the picture of happiness and success. With a slow, deliberate movement, she picked up the photo and turned it face down. It was the first act of deletion. The heartbreak was still there, a physical ache deep in her chest. It felt as if a vital part of her had been surgically, brutally removed without anesthesia. Every shared memory was now tainted, every plan for the future a lie. The baby in her womb, once a symbol of their shared love, was now a tether to a man she no longer knew. A man who had become a monster. A wave of gut-wrenching grief washed over her, and for a full minute she allowed it. She braced her hands on her desk, her body shaking with silent sobs. The tears were for the life she had lost, for the man she had loved, for the naive trust she could never reclaim. But as the wave receded, it left behind not despair, but a shoreline of pure, unadulterated rage. It was a cold, clarifying anger. The anger of a master craftsman whose life's work had been defiled. James hadn't just broken her heart. He had fundamentally disrespected her intelligence. He had assumed she was a fool. He had underestimated her, relegated her to the role of a domestic hormonal afterthought, while he gallivanted with his new plaything. That was his fatal mistake. She sank into her ergonomic chair, the leather sighing under her weight. Her fingers, long and nimble, hovered over the keyboard. Her expression, reflected in the dark screen, was one she hadn't worn in years. It was the look she had when dissecting a hostile term sheet or finding a fatal flaw in a competitor's business model. It was the look of the hunter. She bypassed her usual login and entered a secure, encrypted portal that was her own private creation. It was a ghost in their system, invisible to anyone but her. This was her command center, the digital throne from which she had quietly governed the financial health of Ascendancy Group for a decade. First, she needed an ally. Not just a friend, but a legal weapon. She picked up her phone and dialed a number she knew by heart. "Marcus," she said, her voice devoid of its earlier tremble. It was steady, cold as steel. Marcus Thorne had been her friend since their undergrad days at MIT, and was now one of the most feared corporate lawyers in New York. He was sharp, ruthless in the courtroom, and fiercely loyal to her. "Olivia, it's almost midnight. Is everything okay? Is it the baby?" His voice was thick with sleep, but instantly alert. "The baby is fine," she replied, her tone flat. "I'm not. Marcus, I need you. I need the lawyer, not the friend, right now." The shift in his tone was immediate. "What happened?" She didn't cry. She didn't rage. She recounted the evening's events in a clipped, precise monotone, as if she were delivering a post-mortem report on a failed acquisition. The lie about the board meeting. The dinner reservation at Aurelia. The public proposal to his 25-year-old assistant, Evelyn. There was a long, heavy silence on the other end of the line. When Marcus finally spoke, his voice was laced with a quiet, controlled fury. She knew well. "That son of a bitch," he breathed. "Okay, Olivia, what do you need?" "A divorce filing, restraining order. You name it. It's done." "All of that in time," Olivia said. Her eyes fixed on the lines of code appearing on her screen as her fingers began to fly across the keyboard. "But first, I'm initiating Article 7, Section 4 of the Ascendancy Group Partnership Agreement." Marcus let out a low whistle. "Article 7, Section 4. The Fiduciary Duty Breach Clause. Live. That's the nuclear option. That gives you unilateral control of the capital accounts. You'd need to prove gross misconduct or misappropriation. A simple affair, even a public one, might not be enough to hold up in court if he fights it." "It's enough for tonight," Olivia stated. He used the company credit card to pay for the dinner where he proposed to his mistress, who is also his subordinate. That's a start. But there's more. I'm looking at his expenses for the last 6 months. There are trips to the Hamptons jewelry purchases from Tiffany's hotel suites, all billed to a client development slush fund that I never authorized. She was typing furiously, pulling up records he thought were buried. He's been funding his affair with our money, Marcus. He's been stealing from the company. He's been stealing from me." "Jesus Christ," Marcus muttered. "He's not just a cheater, he's a moron." "His arrogance is his weakness," Olivia said, a grim satisfaction in her voice. "He thought I'd never look. He thought I was too busy planning a nursery. He forgot I built this house." She paused, her finger hovering over the final command. "Marcus, I need you to start drafting the legal framework to back this up. I need affidavits. I need you to be ready to file injunctions by morning. When he wakes up, I want him to be locked out of everything. Professionally, financially, completely." "Consider it done," Marcus said, his voice now energized, the thrill of the fight apparent. "I'll get my team online right now. We'll be ready. Are you sure you want to do this? Liv? Once you press that button, there's no going back." Olivia looked around the office at the life she had poured her soul into. She looked towards the hallway that led to the soft, gentle nursery she had so lovingly prepared. She thought of her son and what she wanted for him. She wanted him to see a mother who was strong, not a mother who was a doormat. She thought of James on one knee, not for her. "There's no going back anyway," she said softly. "He made sure of that tonight." With a final decisive click, she executed the command. Deep within the servers of half a dozen financial institutions, a series of encrypted orders were triggered. Digital locks were engaged, access was rerouted, and liquidity was frozen. It was a silent, bloodless coup executed with a single keystroke. The digital guillotine had fallen on the Ascendancy Group, as James knew it. She leaned back in her chair, the adrenaline of the past hour beginning to fade, leaving a profound, bone-deep exhaustion in its wake. The sun would be up in a few hours. James would come home, probably reeking of champagne and cheap victory, expecting to find his pregnant wife sleeping peacefully. He had no idea that he wasn't coming home to his wife. He was walking into the headquarters of the woman who was about to dismantle his entire world. The longest night of Olivia Ainsworth's life was over. The dawn would bring the reckoning. Dawn broke over Manhattan, painting the sky in shades of bruised purple and soft grey. For Olivia, sleep had been a foreign country she had no visa for. She had spent the pre-dawn hours on secure video calls with Marcus and his legal team, methodically assembling the arsenal she would need. They had compiled a mountain of evidence, the damning credit card statements, flight manifests, hotel folios, and even internal company emails that, when viewed through the lens of betrayal, painted a sordid picture of corporate malfeasance. James, in his arrogance, had left a trail a mile wide. The Tiffany's bracelet for Evelyn's birthday, coded as investor gift. The weekend trip to a 5-star resort in Napa, disguised as off-site strategy session. It was all there. Marcus was practically salivating. "This isn't just a breach of fiduciary duty, Olivia," he'd said, his face grim on the screen. "This is straight-up embezzlement." He could face criminal charges. Olivia felt a flicker of something, a ghost of her former love for him, and almost recoiled at the thought. But she quashed it. This was not about sending him to jail. This was about reclaiming what was hers. At precisely 7:00 a.m., Olivia executed the final stage of her plan. The initial freeze had been a temporary hold. This was the lockdown. She rerouted all inbound and outbound wire permissions to a new set of protocols that required her exclusive authorization. She changed the administrative passwords for all corporate banking portals. She digitally signed and dispatched a formal notice to the board of Ascendancy Group, informing them of the activation of Article 7, Section 4, citing gross financial misconduct by CEO James Ainsworth, and attaching a preliminary file of evidence compiled by Marcus's firm. She concluded by stating that as per the company's foundational bylaws, she was assuming temporary sole operational control of all financial assets, pending a full investigation. It was done. The multi-billion-dollar engine of Ascendancy Group had seized. Every dollar of liquid capital, every investment account, every line of credit was now locked behind a digital wall that only she could breach. She then made herself a cup of decaffeinated tea, her movements calm and measured. She sat at her kitchen island, bathed in the morning light, a picture of serenity. To any observer, she was just a pregnant woman enjoying a quiet morning. But she was a queen who had just checkmated a king in a game he didn't even know he was playing. The sound of a key in the front door lock came at 7:45 a.m. James walked in looking tired but triumphant. His tie was loosened and he was carrying his suit jacket slung over his shoulder. He tossed it onto a chair. The faint, sweet scent of Evelyn's perfume wafted from it. "Morning," he said, forcing a yawn. "That meeting was a killer. I'm exhausted." He walked over to kiss her, but Olivia turned her head slightly so his lips met her cheek. She said nothing. She just sipped her tea, her eyes watching him over the rim of the cup. He frowned, sensing the Arctic chill in the room. "Everything okay?" "You're quiet." "Just thinking," she said softly. "About," he prompted. Walking to the espresso machine, he pressed the button. Nothing happened. He pressed it again. "What's wrong with this thing?" "Perhaps it's tired of making coffee for a liar," Olivia said, her voice even. James froze, his back to her. He turned around slowly, his expression a mixture of confusion and dawning dread. "What did you just say?" "I said," Olivia repeated, placing her cup down with a soft click, "that I know James. I know there was no board meeting. I know you were at Aurelia. I know you proposed to your 25-year-old assistant with a ring you bought on the company card." The color drained from his face. He looked for the first time since she had known him completely and utterly lost. He opened his mouth, but no sound came out. How did you... You really thought I wouldn't find out?" she asked, a humorless laugh escaping her lips. "You thought I was so wrapped up in picking out paint colors for the nursery that I had forgotten how to read a financial statement. That was your mistake. You forgot who I am." Panic began to set in his eyes, quickly replaced by his default setting. Aggressive defense. "Olivia, you're pregnant. You're being hormonal emotional. You don't understand. Don't you dare," she cut him off, her voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "Do not you dare hide behind my pregnancy. I am seeing things more clearly than I ever have before." His phone buzzed on the counter. He glanced at it. Then it buzzed again and again. A torrent of notifications began to flood his screen. His eyes widened in panic as he read the previews. Emails from their CFO, from board members, from the bank. "What's going on?" he muttered, snatching the phone. "The accounts. It says our credit lines are frozen. The wire for the new Series B funding for that biotech startup was rejected." "What the hell did you do?" "I did what our bylaws instructed me to do," Olivia said, standing up and walking to her desk. She turned her monitor towards him, displaying the executed commands and the letter to the board. "I protected the company from a compromised and corrupt CEO. I have frozen every single dollar. Ascendancy Group is officially closed for business. James, your business anyway." He stared at the screen, his face a mask of disbelief and horror. He tried to log into his own banking portal on his phone. Access denied. He tried his corporate Amex details on a vendor site. Card declined. The full catastrophic weight of it finally crashed down on him. It wasn't just his affair that was exposed. His entire professional life was evaporating in real time. The deals he had spent months crafting were about to collapse. His reputation was about to be shattered. "You can't do this," he stammered, his voice trembling with rage. "This is my company. I built this." "You were the face," Olivia corrected him calmly. "I was the foundation. And the foundation is tired of supporting a liar and a thief." "A thief? That's insane." "Is it?" she countered, picking up a printed-out summary of his client development expenses. "Shall we talk about the $5,000 bracelet for Evelyn? Or the weekend in a Napa resort? Or perhaps the down payment on the lease for her new apartment? You have been embezzling from this company, from our company, for months. You didn't just break our marriage vows, James. You broke the law." He stared at her, speechless. The charismatic visionary was gone. In his place was a cornered, panicked man stripped of all his power. The digital guillotine had not just severed his access to his company, it had severed his very identity. He was nothing without ascendancy group, and she had just taken it from him with a few clicks of a mouse. The silence in the penthouse was thick with the fallout of Olivia's bombshell. James stood rooted to the spot, his face shifting through a kaleidoscope of emotions. Disbelief, fury, and finally a dawning, sickening terror. The constant buzzing of his phone was a frantic soundtrack to his world collapsing. "You're insane," he finally spat the words laced with venom. "You'll destroy the company. Our company. All of our work. Everything we built, you're going to burn it all to the ground because you're feeling jealous." Olivia let out a short, sharp laugh that held no humor. "Jealous? Oh, James, we are so far past jealousy. This is not an emotional tantrum. This is a corporate restructuring. I am removing a liability. And right now that liability is you." He took a step towards her, his hands clenched into fists. "You will reverse this right now. Olivia, turn the accounts back on. We will sort out our personal issues in private. But you will not destroy my life's work." "Your life's work?" She countered, her voice dangerously calm as she took a step to meet him unafraid. "I was there, remember, I was there when we had to choose between paying rent for our apartment or the office. I was the one who wrote the algorithm that got us our first seed funding. I was the one who structured the deals that made you look like a genius. You were the star of the show, James, but I wrote the script. I built the stage and I controlled the lights. You seem to have forgotten that. You thought I was just the wife." His face contorted in a sneer. "So that's what this is about. You've always resented my success, my public profile." "No," she said, shaking her head in pity. "I celebrated your success because I thought it was our success. The problem is you started to believe your own press. You thought you were invincible." She gestured towards his phone. "How is your new fiancée, by the way? Has she called? I imagine it's quite difficult to plan a wedding when your fiancé's net worth has been reduced to the lint in his pockets." The mention of Evelyn of the proposal seemed to reignite his fury. "You leave her out of this, I can't. You brought her into our company. You brought her into our finances. And you brought her into the restaurant where you asked me to be your wife." Olivia's voice cracked for the first time, the raw pain momentarily surfacing. "Did you think I wouldn't find that out? Did you think that level of cruelty would go unanswered? Desperation began to creep into his voice. He switched tactics, the anger dissolving into a plea. "Live, please," he said, his voice softening, attempting the old charm that had always worked on her. I messed up. I know I did. I was stupid and reckless, and I am so sorry. I was under a lot of pressure with the new fund, and Evelyn. She was a distraction. It meant nothing. It meant enough for a ring. Olivia shot back, her heart hardening against the familiar manipulative cadence of his voice. It meant enough for you to lie to me for months. It meant enough for you to humiliate me. It was a mistake. I'll end it. I'll fire her. We can fix this, Liv. Think about the baby, he said, his eyes dropping to her stomach. This was his trump card, the one thing he thought could bring her to heel. Our son? What kind of life will he have if we tear everything apart like this? We can go to therapy. We can work through it. Don't do this to our family. It was the single worst thing he could have said. The use of their unborn child as a bargaining chip was a final, unforgivable profanation. Olivia's face, which had shown a flicker of pain, became an impenetrable mask of ice. Family. She repeated the word as if it were a foreign object in her mouth. A family is built on trust and respect, James. You have incinerated both. This child, she said, placing a hand protectively on her belly, will not be raised in a house of lies. He will not be a pawn you use to control me. He will have one devoted, honest parent, not two who despise each other. You have no right to use him as a shield for your disgusting behavior. He saw then that he had lost. The final lever of control was broken. The terror returned tenfold. What do you want, Olivia? Money? You want to buy me out? Fine. Name your price. Just turn the company back on before it's too late. That's the thing, James. You still don't get it, she said, walking past him towards the window, looking out over the city. Her city. I don't want to buy you out. I'm pushing you out. With cause. According to the bylaws, my bylaws, a partner found guilty of gross financial misconduct forfeits their equity stake. It gets absorbed back into the company. You're not getting a buyout. You're not getting a price. You are going to walk out of this apartment with nothing but the clothes on your back and a mountain of legal bills. He stared at her, his mouth agape. The sheer audacious totality of her victory was finally dawning on him. She had planned for this. She had built this trap years ago, and he had stupidly, arrogantly walked right into it. There's one more thing, Olivia said, turning back to face him. I ran a background check on your fiancée. Evelyn. Her full name is Evelyn Vance. James's face went white. It was a shade of fear Olivia had never seen on him before. Her father, Olivia, continued, her voice, clinical and precise, is Arthur Vance, the head of the FCC's acquisitions department, the very man whose approval you need to finalize the mega merger with Telcorp. The deal you told our board was a sure thing because of your impeccable government contacts. You weren't just having an affair, were you, James? You were trying to marry your way into a billion-dollar deal. You were using our company, our money to secure a connection that you were going to present as your own brilliant networking. The final piece of the puzzle clicked into place. It was a betrayal so profound, so layered with deceit, that it was almost a work of art. He hadn't just cheated on his wife. He had been prepared to defraud his own company. I've already had Marcus forward the preliminary evidence of your embezzlement, along with the details of your... Relationship with his daughter to Arthur Vance's office, Olivia said coolly. I imagine that merger is now off the table, along with your career. James looked like he had been physically struck. He staggered back, his face a ruin of sweat and despair. He was no longer the master of the universe. He was a fraud exposed in the most brutal way imaginable by the one person he was certain he controlled. Get out, Olivia said, her voice quiet, but carrying the unshakable weight of finality. Get out of my home. Get out of my company. And stay away from my son. He looked at her one last time, a desperate, pleading look that she met with a gaze as hard and unyielding as the diamonds he had once given her. There was nothing left to say. He turned a broken man and walked out of the penthouse, leaving the door to swing shut behind him, the soft click echoing like a gavel on the end of an era. Olivia stood alone in the silence, the sole undisputed ruler of the empire she had built, saved and now claimed. The weeks that followed James's ignominious exit were a masterclass in controlled demolition and meticulous reconstruction. The storm had broken, and now Olivia was navigating the wreckage not as a survivor, but as the architect of the new world, rising from the old. Her first act in the echoing silence of the penthouse after he left was not one of celebration. It was to make a pot of tea sit at her desk and begin the work. The initial 24 hours were critical. She convened an emergency virtual board meeting at noon that same day. The board members, a collection of seasoned, cynical industry veterans, appeared on her screen with expressions ranging from grave concern to outright alarm. They had all received her notification and had seen the initial trickle of catastrophic financial alerts. They expected hysteria tears, a messy marital spat, spilling into the corporate domain. They got Olivia, calm, composed, and armed with an unassailable mountain of data. Good afternoon, she began, her voice even and steady, betraying none of the turmoil of the preceding night. As you know, I have enacted Article 7, Section 4 of the Ascendancy Group's foundational bylaws. This was not a decision made lightly. For the past several months, James Ainsworth has engaged in a pattern of behavior constituting gross financial misconduct and embezzlement. She didn't speak of the affair or the proposal. She kept it sterile, professional. She shared her screen, displaying spreadsheets that glowed with damning clarity. Line by line, she walked them through the unauthorized slush fund, the lavish personal expenses disguised as corporate development, the jewelry, the secret apartment lease for Evelyn. These actions represent a profound breach of fiduciary duty and have exposed the firm to significant legal and financial risk, she stated. My freezing of our capital accounts was a necessary defensive measure to protect the firm's assets and your investments from further misappropriation. There were questions, of course. Sharp, probing inquiries from Howard Sterling, a grizzled private equity magnate who had known both of them for years. Olivia, this is a serious accusation. Are you certain this isn't a misunderstanding? A personal dispute, Howard, Olivia replied, meeting his gaze through the camera without flinching. Does a $200,000 down payment on a Soho apartment for a junior analyst billed to a phantom client account sound like a misunderstanding to you? I have the wire transfers. I have the lease agreement. This is not a dispute. It is a theft. Her cold, factual delivery left no room for debate. She then laid out her plan for stabilization, for transparent cooperation with any regulatory bodies, and for maintaining operational continuity for their portfolio companies. By the end of the hour-long call, the tone had shifted entirely. The board, seeing not a scorned wife, but a decisive leader protecting her territory, gave her their unanimous vote of confidence to assume the role of interim CEO. The first most critical battle was won. Simultaneously, Marcus Thorne was waging war on the legal front. The evidence Olivia had unearthed was so blatant that James's initial legal strategy of bluster and denial crumbled within days. Arthur Vance, a man whose reputation was built on an image of unimpeachable integrity, was apoplectic. An internal leak from his office, likely deliberate, informed Marcus that Vance had personally called the U.S. Attorney's office. He was not just killing the Telcorp deal, he was salting the earth where James's career once stood. Evelyn Vance became a ghost. One of Olivia's contacts sent her a piece of gossip Evelyn had been escorted from her newly leased Soho apartment by her father's security team, her belongings packed into an unmarked van. She was flown to a wellness retreat in Switzerland, a polite term for a gilded cage where she could be kept out of the papers. The Tiffany bracelet was reportedly returned to the store. She was a casualty of a war she had been too naive to understand she was fighting. Back at the penthouse, Olivia began the process of exorcism. She hired a discreet moving company, instructing them to pack every item belonging to James. She stood by a silent supervisor as they carefully boxed up his tailored suits, his collection of expensive watches, his photos, and his self-congratulatory business awards. She felt a strange detachment watching his life being dismantled. There was no anger or lingering sadness. It was like watching workers clear a condemned building. It was simply necessary. When they removed his desk from the home office, the space instantly felt larger, lighter. She had it replaced with a plush armchair and a small bookshelf filled with books on child development and, ironically, corporate ethics. The transformation of her home mirrored her own internal shift. The sharp, agonizing pain of betrayal had subsided, leaving behind a resilient scar tissue. Her focus narrowed to two things: the future of her company and the future of her son. During the day, she was the decisive CEO, reassuring investors and restructuring management. At night, she was an expectant mother, assembling a crib, washing tiny clothes, and reading to the bump, her voice soft and full of promise. A month after the coup, she sat in her obstetrician's office, listening to the strong, steady thump of her son's heartbeat on the Doppler machine. It was a rhythm of pure life, a sound that cut through all the corporate and legal noise. "He sounds perfect," Olivia Dr. Matthews said warmly. "You're doing wonderfully. Despite everything I've read in the papers. Are you managing the stress?" Olivia smiled, a genuine, relaxed smile. The stress was before doctor. "This is just management." It was the truth. The chaos of James's deceit had been stressful. The clarity of purpose she now possessed was invigorating. The final piece of the old world fell away on a Tuesday afternoon. She was in the newly configured office reviewing a term sheet for a promising biotech firm when the text from Marcus arrived. He took the plea bargain. 5 years minimum security. He gives up all claims, all rights forever. It's over, Liv. You're free. She read the message once, then twice. She leaned back in her chair, the leather sighing softly. It wasn't the explosive rush of victory she might have once imagined. It was a quiet, profound sense of gravity. A life had been irrevocably broken, a consequence of his own choices. Another life, hers and her son's, was now truly unencumberedly her own. She felt the weight of that freedom, its vastness, its responsibility. That evening she stood in the completed nursery. The setting sun cast a warm golden glow across the room. She ran her hand over the soft fabric of the baby blanket in the crib. She thought of James not with hatred, but with a kind of clinical pity. He was a man who had flown so close to the sun on wings of arrogance and deceit and had simply inevitably fallen. Her son kicked a powerful, reassuring movement. She placed both hands on her stomach, a silent communion. "It's all gone now," she whispered into the quiet room. "All the noise, all the lies." She looked out the window at the endless constellation of city lights. It was not a kingdom she had conquered. It was a landscape she had cleared. She had razed the corrupted structures and laid a new foundation, built not on a shared dream with a flawed partner, but on her own unshakable strength. The ashes of her marriage had not been a sign of destruction, but the fertile ground from which her new life as a mother, as a CEO, as the sole master of her destiny, would grow. And it was just beginning. That was the story of Olivia Ainsworth, a woman who turned the deepest betrayal into her greatest victory. It's a raw reminder that the systems we build can also be the keys to our liberation, and that true strength isn't about never falling, but about how you rise. Olivia didn't just get revenge. She reclaimed her narrative, her company, and her future for herself and her unborn child. What did you think of her story? Was her response justified? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. If you were moved by Olivia's incredible strength and resilience, show your support by hitting that like button, sharing this video with someone who needs to hear it, and make sure you subscribe to our channel for more true-to-life stories of drama, justice, and empowerment. Don't forget to ring that notification bell so you never miss an update.